Woohoo!
So we're going to return to existentialism today.
Okay.
And existentialism is a philosophy that promotes personal responsibility, right? Your actions, your decisions control your destiny.
Yeah.
But existentialism actually spends a lot of time and effort talking about others and how others affect us, how they affect our being. Because people have a unique way of making us feel. So let's start with a simple, broad question. How do you feel different when you're around other people versus alone?
I guess that when I'm around other people, I feel more aware of how my actions and words could be like interpreted by people. So when I'm alone, I'm not consciously monitoring myself for anything. But then when I'm around other people, I am. And like just not even like what I do with it, but just the general awareness of like being seen and being around other people makes me feel differently and act differently just naturally. And like it depends on like if I'm around friends, then I might feel like comfortable or happy, or if I'm around strangers, or depending on how close I am to the people around me, then I will feel like different emotions depending on it. But there's always that general thing of like, okay, so like I'm acting a way that's going to be seen by other people, whether like no matter how much that influences my actions, I still know what's going on.
Well, and so in existentialism, they talk about that as the gaze of the other and how it essentially creates a mirror for yourself.
Yeah.
And so it throws your attention back onto yourself, which can be an uncomfortable thing. How is the way that other people make you look at yourself different than just being introspective when you're alone?
When I'm alone, I'm looking inside of myself, but when I'm with other people, I'm looking outside of myself. I'm looking at the surface level vision of what other people see. Well, when I'm alone and I'm being introspective, I'm more looking at like my internal state. So when I'm around other people, I'm more focused on how I'm acting, how I'm talking, how I'm being viewed by other people, and how that would change their opinions about me and how that would make them think about me. But when I'm on my own, I'm being introspective and I'm not really thinking about myself as in what could other people think, and I'm not really thinking about myself like from outside of me. I'm thinking of myself sort of from the inside.
What makes being with other people stressful?
When you're around other people, they are able to form their own opinions about you and perspectives of you. And so just the state of being around other people means that anything that you could do or say will have a lasting impact on other people's perceptions of you. Well, if you're like say if you make a mistake in front of other people, then they could assume things about that, like oh, maybe you make mistakes a lot, maybe you're clumsy or whatever, depending on what the mistake was. Maybe you don't think a lot. They could make like whether fair or unfair, they will form opinions about you, even if they're minor, even if they're major, about you based on your actions there. Well, like if I make a mistake when I'm alone, then I can just I'm aware of myself and I'm aware of who I am, and I can just sort of brush it off and nobody saw it. But when people see you, they get an imperfect look at you. They get look of you of what you are capable of showing to the world, an incomplete look, and what you're trying to show to the world. And so their opinions of you are entirely based on what you choose to show to them, because they can't see inside of your head. So what you choose to show to them and what you choose to do and say then suddenly becomes a lot more meaningful, because that's all they're seeing.
Well, I think there's a word for that. It's judgment.
Yeah.
That you're concerned about. When you're with other people, how much time do you spend judging them?
Not a lot of time. I don't think I'm actively, if people say this, they're like, everyone's always focused on themselves, but like, you don't really internalize that because you're so focused on yourself and what other people think, and then what other people are thinking of you. But when you are out and about with other people, like what people say and do, you might make your own judgments of them, and you'll make your own perceptions of them. You will naturally think this is who a person is, especially when it comes to things like first impressions. But generally, if someone makes a little mistake, you're not going to be judging them harshly for that. And you're not really looking at them all that much at all. So unless they do something that really draws attention to themselves, you're mostly going to be looking at yourself instead. So like, I'm not really judging people at all, really. Like, I guess I'm looking at them. I guess like I'm making perceptions of them, but I'm not judging them in the judgment way that I'm worried about for myself, which is that they're judging me harshly and negatively.
Right. So on some level, when you're around other people, not only are you not judging them, you don't even see them in some level. You know, your focus isn't there.
Yeah.
You know, you're not. I mean, if they do little weird things or idiosyncratic things, you literally almost don't even see it.
Yeah. Well, it depends on the person. Like, it depends on, like, if I'm comfortable around them, then I'm more likely to be focused on them instead of myself because I'm less, like, aware of, like...
Mm-hmm.
But, like, when it comes to, like, meeting strangers and first impressions, I'm going to be focused on them a little bit. I'm going to, like, listen to what they say, but I'm also going to be, like, listening to what I say and how I act and how I look. So, like, ultimately, the focus is more on myself.
Well, so let's get into that a little bit. How does it feel different being around people you know versus strangers?
When I'm around people I know, and I'm already sort of aware of, like, who they are and how they're going to react to me, I feel a little bit more comfortable because I know that the first impressions are already out of the way, and they knew who I am. And, like, if we're friends, then I already know they generally like who I am. But even if it's just a group of people that I'm generally aware of, like my classmates or something, I'm not going to be as focused on myself and what I'm doing because they already have their impression of me, and so doing a little thing isn't going to majorly impact that impression. So I'm still aware of what I'm doing and saying. I'm not going to say anything huge or like do anything. I'm not going to try to draw attention to myself at all. I'm going to actually try to draw attention away from me a little bit. But if I make something like a small mistake, then I will still feel uncomfortable and embarrassed, but I'm not going to make it feel like a huge thing to myself, quite as a huge thing to myself as I was a stranger, because I know that they already know who I am to a certain extent. But if I'm interacting with strangers, then every moment feels like sort of on a war field where I'm trying to give the best and to some extent most accurate and honest, but also just generally best impression of myself. I'm trying to get them to make sure that they're not misinterpreting who I am in a negative way, but I'm also trying to make sure they are sort of misinterpreting who I am in a positive way. I'm trying to make sure that they think I am the best person I am capable of being without showing the true, honest extent to myself, showing all the positive traits and showing the negative traits. And so I'm very aware of who I am and how I'm acting, and I'm very aware of trying not to make any mistakes, trying not to say anything, set over my words, trying to monitor every word that I say and make sure that it will build the image that I'm trying to communicate to them. And so when I'm interacting with someone for the first time, sort of all of my brain power is just going to making sure that they're getting the right impression of me.
Does it feel different to be in a crowd versus a small group or just with a single other person?
When I'm in a crowd, I'm just part of a group. I'm part of the background. I can blend into the background. So for one person, another person in the crowd isn't a super interpersonal connection. It's just you're a part of the same crowd. You're a part of the same group of people, and it's a large group of people, so you can't possibly focus on everyone at once. So no matter what I do, I'm not going to make a huge impression on people. I'm not going to make, like, I'm not really meeting anyone, even if it's a total group of strangers, because they're not going to notice me too much. Because logically they're probably focused on themselves as well, but, like, they're also focused on everyone else. So even if they're trying to look at me, even if they're trying to make a bad judgment of me, they still wouldn't be entirely capable of that because I'm practically unnoticeable. When I'm in a small group of people, I get that feeling, but to a much lesser extent. And it feels like I still need to be on guard and choosing how I display myself to others. But I also don't feel like I'm under that attack 100% of the time because people's attention shifts to other people. And so even if I do something, they might not be looking at me. So it's sort of a balance between knowing like that whatever I say or do could make an impact on people, but also knowing that that impact will be spread amongst the small group of people that are also there. So it's sort of a balance. But then when I'm one-on-one with someone, it's like there's no one to focus on except for each other and ourselves. And so I am just on full panic mode where everything I say has something, is something, and then everything I do is something, and their full attention is going to be on me. Obviously, I'm not really thinking that they're going to be a focus on themselves, even though that's what I'm doing. So I have to make sure that everything I say and do is perfectly monitored and perfectly calibrated to form the best possible image of me, and I'm completely focused on myself.
Of the three sizes of groups, one-on-one, small group versus large group, where do you feel most comfortable usually?
So if I'm with friends, with a small group compared to one-on-one, then it depends. It depends on like how I'm feeling, how I'm doing it, because sometimes in a small group, the attention is, as I said, diverted from you, and so it passes along a lot of people. And so people's attention can't be on me. So if we're having a conversation, and sometimes things I say are passed over, and that's the same goes for everyone else. But it can also be some more interesting and fun to interact with a lot of people because you never get bored and it never feels like the conversation is dying out because someone always has something new to say. So if I'm with like someone that I'm very, very close to, then I would prefer to be on-one for a short amount of time, just because if like I actually want to have a conversation with them and like be involved in the conversation. But if it's someone that's just like a group of like casual friends, then I might prefer to be in the smaller group because it'll just be fun and I'll be able to like interact with my friends without feeling the pressure to keep the conversation going. And then even if there's something I want to say and I sort of get drowned out by everyone else, then it doesn't matter as much to me because it's just sort of a casual conversation anyway. But when it comes to strangers, one-on-one to small group to large crowd, I definitely think it's clear that I feel way more comfortable in the large crowd than I do one-on-one because there's no pressure there. And then the same goes for like the small group, large group, one-on-one. It's like the bigger the crowd gets, the more comfortable I feel being there because then I can just sort of like a stranger in the background instead of like someone that you're actually interacting with.
Does it feel different to be in a group when the group has a purpose? Or you have a place in that group, right? Like, say you're a student in a class versus, a group or a situation where there is no purpose.
If I feel like I have like a purpose there, like if I'm sort of like I'm a part of a group, I'm part of like a project or something, then I feel like it'd be sort of frustrating to be in like a very large group because I feel like I wouldn't be able to find my purpose there. I wouldn't be able to do like what I feel like I'm supposed to do there, and I wouldn't be able to communicate with anyone at all. If I'm in a small group, then it feels like that whole everyone talking over each other suddenly becomes like less of sort of a fun thing that can get a little bit frustrating at times and more like a huge issue. Because when you actually have a purpose and you have a goal you're trying to accomplish, then it's no longer sort of a casual, friendly thing where if you get interrupted, then it's okay. Besides like your own feelings, it's like you need to communicate properly in order to make a plan, make a goal, in order to complete the task that you've been given. And so it gets really frustrating if you feel unable to communicate with someone when everyone's talking over each other. And then when you're one-on-one, it feels like the conversation is not going to die down, but also more importantly, you don't feel the pressure to keep conversation going with something because it's not about like first impressions. It's about completing the task assigned, completing the task given. When you have that open field of communication, one-to-one, the pressure is on more because you're the only two people that are doing the thing, that are like a part of the group. So that can be a little bit uncomfortable. but also it feels more comfortable to be able to actually communicate with someone directly and make sure they're not ignoring me, and to actually make a plan or a field of action.
Does it feel different being around someone who shares your beliefs versus someone who has radically different beliefs than you do?
Yeah, definitely.
How?
When I'm around someone that shares my beliefs, it feels more comfortable. Like, it feels less like I have to monitor what I say. Obviously, I still feel that, like that general anxiety, but it feels like we already have something to agree on, so it's something we can bond over. And it also feels like I'm able to sort of speak freely about that topic. But I'm with someone that has radically different beliefs than mine, then it feels uncomfortable because I constantly have to police what I have to say. And I feels like I don't want to offend. I don't want to, and it's like it feels harder to make a connection with that person because I'm trying to skirt around the topic without like communicating directly that I disagree. And then obviously, if it's a viewpoint that I feel like I can't really disagree with someone on, if it's like sort of a viewpoint that concerns like a major aspect of who I am or like my moral code or something, then I just sort of feel generally uncomfortable. And I also don't really feel the pressure to make a good impression on that person because I sort of feel like, okay, I don't like you and I know you probably don't like me, so I'm going to be generally polite, but I'm also not going to make a big deal out of this because I'm not actually that worried about first impressions here because I don't want to build a lasting relationship with you.
Do you think that shared beliefs make it easier to be more intimate with someone?
Yeah, I do. Because when you have shared beliefs, you have a sort of a base foundation that you can build upon with your relationship. You have a topic of conversation to discuss. You might have an activity to do depending on what the belief you share is. But you generally have just a kinship with that person, so that you can talk about, that you can discuss, and that will be easier to build a relationship on than if you just had nothing to start with at all. But then also, just besides the general friendly conversation starter, you also feel more capable of being intimate with that person because you don't feel uncomfortable, you don't feel like you're trying to police yourself around them. And intimacy involves honesty and trying to really expose yourself fully to another person. And if you don't feel comfortable fully exposing yourself to the other person because your beliefs are different, or you feel like if you do expose yourself or they expose themselves, then you'll both be judging each other and feel sort of uncomfortable with who they've revealed, then it becomes much harder to get a level of intimacy unless the belief you're differing on is something that you're either willing to compromise on or something that isn't a major part of your sort of list of beliefs and that isn't a major part of your being.
I think that the things that we disagree on a lot as people are these core beliefs.
Yeah.
And those core beliefs are deep beliefs, right? They kind of are the foundations for a lot of your other beliefs. And so if you can't share that with another person, I think it's not only harder to maintain the surface level thing a little bit, but it's extremely hard to get deep with someone.
Definitely.
And those are the moments where you feel connected and intimate, right? Is where you get to go deep.
Yeah. We hope that you enjoyed that video, and if you did, please consider checking out the next one in the series.
Or some of our other series on philosophy and life.
We upload videos every Friday, so don't forget to like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. See you next week.